week, NFL Films presents No Man's Land, where pro football's foot soldiers wage all-out war. Then after treading on this tough terrain, we'll travel back to Chicago's South Side for a look at the Windy City's wacky Cardinals of the 1950s. Hi, and welcome to NFL Films Presents. I'm Harry Callis, along with Steve Sable. Steve, over the years, the face of pro football has been altered by many modifications. But the battle for the line of scrimmage remains the essence of the game. It's still the place where games are won or lost.
It's the pits. Well, you know, it's the pits, Harry. That's what the players call it. It's the battle of the trenches. And it's fought in an area about the size of a closet. And it's probably the most savage 3 or 4 seconds in all of sports. It's sort of like a very primitive game of chess because it matches heads as well as hearts. And for every move, there's always a counter move.
We're going to take a two-part look at the violent battle for this narrow strip of land. First, the coaches will explain the intricate mayhem of line play. Then we'll examine the minds and motives of the men who actually fight the battle of no man's land.
You're really fighting over the length of the football. And that fight maybe lasts 3 seconds on any play.
Right up front, the battle zone is really what it is, and when those two lines charge on every single play, some 70 times a game, you can tell that there's a lot of physical, brute strength and force built right in there.
We maintain to our linemen that in order for our backs to make yardage, we must attack that no man's land, and we must gain into that no man's land and control the opponent.
If you can win those 2 feet the majority of the time in a football game, good chance you're going to win the football game.
The line of scrimmage. Here, the whites of your opponent's eyes are clearly discernible, and there is no escape from the blood, sweat, and tears that are spent during the fight for this territory. Since the ice ages of football, this battle for the low ground has been an unglorified aspect of the game. But in the 60s, trench warfare enjoyed a renaissance when the Green Bay Packers made it an art form. In Vince Lombardi's eyes, this was the essence of football, a distilling of the game into a simple struggle of strength versus strength. Since the 60s, though, the nature of this single combat warfare has undergone a set of changes. Today, the battle at the line of scrimmage demands more than brute force. It requires an acute sense of concentration and intelligence for both offensive and defensive linemen.
Defensive linemen basically are an attacking unit concentrating on the ball. It's a visual reaction to when the ball moves and to what happens in front of them. Offensive linemen have to have a lot of self-discipline. They have to come up there and they're working in an area about that much space. You listen to the quarterback. Is he changing a play that was called in the huddle at the line of scrimmage? Now, he knows who he's supposed to block. And he's focusing on the snap count. All of a sudden, the defense moves. Now he's going to have to block somebody else. He has to make a slight adjustment, you see. So it requires a tremendous amount of self-discipline, a tremendous amount of concentration.
The critical part is the initial contact. If you can be just a taint of being illegal and then legal quickly again. So you get the advantage on your opposition by holding very quickly, then letting go. But now you have him in position of blocking. So you'll see that all through football. And defensively, it's much the same. You'll see a defensive lineman just for an instant grab an offensive blocker in a line stunt, then let go of him quickly. But by that time, the line stunt's underway. So it's not how you finish the play, it's how you start it.
The use of the hands today has allowed them to push and shove and get angles on people. Before, it was just a matter of my taking you on. Well, now they'll set him up, and the guy will come from the side and push him. And then they'll fall out and double team this way. They're creative. They are creative. You have to give them a little bit of credit for that. And sometimes I just shake my head and say, the things that these guys go through, but for them it's important. They're really a game within the game, and they take great pride in what they do.
In no man's land, the space required for each collision remains the same as it did since the dawn of football. Its strategies may have changed, but within its confines resides the NFL's most heavily weighted and hotly contested issue. The battle for no man's land is truly a battle of giants. We'll be right back with a personal view of that struggle. And in the golden world of pro football, the linemen are the coal miners. Once in a while, a great defensive lineman like Mark Gastineau or Howie Long will rise out of the pits and into the light of national publicity. Offensive linemen, however, remain football's forgotten men. They are the no men of no man's land. Among the men who man the line of scrimmage, there is a communal bond. They are united in the trappings of battle. And like strangers who come together in war, they revel in camaraderie. Their task is to duel like knights of old, especially in the case of offensive linemen.
It's pretty much man-to-man combat the whole way through, and especially at offensive tackle. You go against the same defensive player throughout the game. You're going to play against them, whether it be a pass, a run, short yardage, goal line. Where at running back or quarterback, you have so many various looks. Offensive line, you play against one man, and that's your assignment the whole day.
We're the ones at war so the politicians can play with the ball, and that's basically what's going on. You know, it's not that throw and catch thing that you see on TV. You're down there pushing, shoving, and I don't want to say biting and grabbing. I'm not that tough. It's just idea. But it's a different world. In my opinion, we're at war so everybody else can play.
I think that's why people still like football, and I think that's why they like offensive, defensive linemen, because America has always been a fighting, country. Ever since we are, our existence, we, fought in the Civil War, the England War, all the wars we've ever had. There's been, a bunch of fights we've always been in, and we love to fight. People really don't like war that much now, but since we don't have a war, they love to watch offensive and defensive linemen beat the hell out of each other. That's what's the best part of it, because this is truly America right here, down in the pits.
Let's go! I think individually that when you win is when you control a certain particular area of real estate on the field. But it's a strange process in order to have a play be successful, because I've seen so many times where an offensive lineman or any player in general has been beaten and the play has been successful. Then at other times, I personally have had times where I've made a great block and I'm saying to myself, hey, there's going to be a touchdown. I look back and it's a 3-yard loss.
You all right, Warren?
They're handling us like a bunch of babies out there, boys. You gotta get your...
I'm aware of what the score is and what's going on, but still, it doesn't really sink in. I'm so in tune to what I have to do individually against my opponent. I think that's where I get my greatest satisfaction out of the game, is playing against one guy across the line of scrimmage, because I look at it more as a game within a game.
You can't go down there and think that you're going to be on the front page of Sports Illustrated. You've got to have your ego in your pocket, your guts in your pocket, and your heart in your pocket, and you've got to be able to pull them out at any time, because you're going to need all three of them.
A lot of heart, very little ego, and a whole lot of guts. They are the character elements needed to delve deeply into the abyss known as no man's land. Paul Hornung of the Green Bay Packers kicked a field goal and scored a touchdown in the NFL championship game as the Packers beat Allie Sherman's New York Giants 37-0. It would be 21 years before anyone would duplicate Hornung's achievement. Since Paul Hornung, who has scored both a touchdown and a field goal in a playoff game. To score a field goal and a touchdown in a playoff game is kicker Mick Luckhurst of the Atlanta Falcons. In In the 1982 playoffs against Minnesota, Luckhurst drilled a field goal and 3 extra points, then equaled Horning's feat in a bit of razzle-dazzle. On what appeared to be a field goal attempt, older Mike Morosky rolled out and pitched to the British-born Luckhurst. With this 17-yard score, Mick may have become the first native of the United Kingdom ever to rush for an NFL touchdown. Unfortunately, Mick's accomplishments could not stave off a second-half Minnesota comeback, as quarterback Tommy Kramer led a Viking rally that defeated the Falcons 30-24. Maybe it might have helped if Atlanta had played Luckhurst on the defensive unit as well.
The Cardinals were born in Chicago in 1898, making them professional football's oldest continuing operation. Before moving to St. Louis in 1960, they played in Chicago's Comiskey Park. And during the 10-year period between 1950 and 1959, the Cardinals finished in the conference cellar 5 times, and only once did they manage to compile a winning record. But despite their losing ways, they were never dull. They produced some of the most exciting and most amazing plays in NFL history. While their glamorous North Side neighbors, the Chicago Bears, might have been the monsters of the Midway, these Cardinals presented the most entertaining sideshow in the crazy circus that was pro football in the 1950s.
Well, they had some wild coaches. They had some wild players in those days. They had guys who kind of inept, and the best thing they could do is run as far as away from the defending lineman and throw the ball. And sometimes it took on a kind of a Charlie Chaplin-esque appearance out there.
In true slapstick fashion, the Chicago Cardinals of the 1950s walked a path laden with banana peels. Footballs were thrown like pies, and there were chases worthy of the Keystone Cops. Like slapstick movie characters, the Cardinals thrived on ridiculous situations that enabled them to display uncommon resourcefulness. From chaos, the Cardinals created high comedy, and it was high comedy created in a low-budget environment.
We didn't have very good equipment. The Cardinals at that time, the word class never came close to us. We rode the train to games, train to Cleveland, train to Green Bay, wherever we went. It was just it was not the big leagues.
We played at Comiskey Park in those days, which was the home of the White Sox, so they used to sod the infield. And we had scored a touchdown, so it was on the south end of the field, which was the sodded portion. And Billy Cross went in to hold for Joe Gary. Well, the ball was snapped. Joe goes through the motion, makes a kick, and ref throws his hand up in the air. The stands all yell, and what had happened is that Joe had actually kicked a piece of sod had gone over the goalpost. And Billy Cross, I'll never forget, I happened to be looking at Billy, and the look on his face, because there he is still holding the ball.
The team was usually left holding the bag during a decade in which they totaled a mere 33 wins. They boasted but one true superstar, halfback Ollie Matson, whose speed made him seem less a man than a force of nature.
I can remember hearing him go by. It was like the windstorm going by. And I never heard anything like that before. He was just so fast that he created a breeze when he went by.
Matson, number 33, was a rushing, receiving, and return threat, whose many talents would earn him a place in the Hall of Fame. The Cards got a lot out of Matson, and when they eventually traded him, they got a lot for him, or so it seemed.
The Cardinals traded Ollie Matson to the Los Angeles Rams for 11 ball players. Of the 11, 9 had to be classified as garbage. Absolute garbage. I think 6 or 7 of them never showed up because they were real dogs.
The Matson trade was one of several unusual personnel decisions.
We drafted a quarterback from Ohio State one year, #1. And we said, oh, super, boy, we needed a quarterback badly. And I, being a receiver, thought, I wish we'd get somebody to get the ball to me. And lo and behold, a fellow showed up and started throwing a ball, and he couldn't get the ball 15 yards down the field. And we found out the reason they drafted him because they liked his picture in the street in Smith. He had nice legs and looked well proportioned and looked like a real football player.
But even if the team's quarterbacks weren't picture perfect, they did fit into an offense that somehow managed to move the ball forward without benefit of the forward pass. During the 1950s, sleight of hand was the Cardinals' trademark, and the tricks of their trade induced gasps of astonishment from an awestruck audience.
Although we didn't win many games, we were exciting to watch because really sometimes the players didn't know what was going to happen.
A lot of those plays really were not designed plays, needless to say. By looking at them, you could tell they weren't designed plays. I can remember the 5 head coaches that I played for in 5 years. And sometimes they just throw up their hands in disgust because of the way that some of those zany plays would turn out.
One head coach who devised creative methods of indicating his disgust was Joe Steidahr.
He had a very unique way of paying us. He'd bring in a fistful of brown envelopes which contained our paychecks. And he would have seen the game films, and he would write a little note on each player about his performance in the previous game, such things as, I always thought you had no guts, and now after watching the film, it's confirmed. And I remember once we had to play the Bears the last game of the season. And he came storming in the door of the dressing room, threw the checks across the dressing room. They scattered all over the floor. Told us to fight for our own checks. And he says, if you guys don't beat the Bears next week, I'm not paying any of you. I'm finding you a game salary. Well, that's the only game we won that year. We beat the Bears at Wrigley Field 24-10.
For a while, the Cardinals always seemed to cash in against the Bears. From 1950 to 1955, the Cards won 6 out of 9 meetings from their more successful neighbors from the North Side. This crosstown rivalry gave the Cardinals an opportunity to steal the thunder from the team that reigned supreme in the Windy City.
The media, we felt, was always painted towards the North Side, the Chicago Bears. We never had that on the South Side. I can remember playing games in Comiskey Park in the 50s where there were 6,000 or 7,000, 9,000 people in the stands. Wrigley Field was always sold out.
But when the Bears went down to play the Cardinals in Comiskey Park, the place was packed. I mean, and it turned into a riot every time. All the games I played against the Cardinals when I was with the Bears ended up in a fight.
But while the Cardinals often won the battles, the Bears ultimately won the war for territorial rights to the toddling town. In 1960, the Cardinals moved to St. Louis, signaling the end of a colorful era. During the 1950s, the Chicago Cardinals didn't produce many victories, but their offbeat and exciting style of play produced plenty of thrills and made them one of the most entertaining teams in NFL history.
Inches to go in the 4th quarter. Crunch time for the New York Jets defense. The Colts decide to go for 6, but Albert Bentley is stopped in his tracks by Marty Lyons and friends as the Jets preserve their narrow 5-point margin of victory over Indianapolis.